Good afternoon and welcome to Pittsburgh City Council's reconvened cablecast public hearing for Tuesday, October 18, 2025, relative to Council Bill 2220. Would a clerk please read the subject of the bill?
Bill 2220, resolution authorizing the mayor and the director of Department of Finance on behalf of the city of Pittsburgh to enter into a bill or bills of sale, assignment, and indenture with Pittsburgh Water and Sewer Authority, doing business as Pittsburgh Water, for leased property pursuant to the July 1995 capital lease agreement for total amount not to exceed $1.
Thank you. For the record, we are joined by Councilman Bob Shoreland. Our next order of business is testimony from our registered speakers. Please give your name and address for the public record. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes to address City Council. Let the record reflect we've also been joined by Councilwoman Gross. Our first registered speaker is Chief Pomai Chakman Yahelahi.
Greetings, everyone. Can I be heard?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you so much. I'm calling today representing Upstream Pittsburgh's Environmental Justice Table as the advocacy consultant. And it's really it's important for City Council to understand the importance of protecting the infrastructure that's going to be transferred over to Pittsburgh Water. We fought hard to create a referendum so that the city residents could vote on protecting the very essential life-sustaining water that we all share. Now, I know there's other additions that are included in this that hadn't been discussed at the larger community level. And now you have an opportunity to double down and make sure that these protections are put in place. If we don't do these things today, our future generations will suffer high rates, will suffer inadequate water, or suffer the inability to have access to clean drinking water. Anything can happen when you don't act to protect the very life-sustaining resource that we all share. Now, as an Aboriginal American Indian not taxed, I'm always speaking in respect of the land as it relates to my ancestral connection to it. However, in addition to that, all of the people on this land deserve to have clean drinking water. All of the people on this land deserve to have access to water that is affordable to them. My fight is not the same fight as the citizens. However, in this fight, it is the same fight because our future generations will look back at the work that we did today to ensure that they have what they need in the future. So I encourage you to put additional protections on the water and this transfer of infrastructure that's going to be going to Pittsburgh Water. I thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much. And let the record reflect we've been joined by Councilman Strasburger. Our next speaker is John Steffen.
Good afternoon. My name is John Steffen, and I live at 330 2nd Street in Aspinwall. I'm speaking today both as the longtime convener of the Negley Run Watershed Task Force and as a member of the Our Water Table. Thank you for holding this hearing. Our region's water infrastructure is one of the most important public assets we have, and it deserves regular, open forums like this one. My comments today focus on governance and transparency because the proposed asset transfer agreement as written weakens both. The agreement should be improved to include broader public outreach and more meaningful customer engagement and decision-making, or council can enact additional ordinances to ensure that infrastructure, watersheds, and community planning are integrated. At a moment when our region needs clear, accountable water planning, this agreement risks reducing the public's voice in decisions that will shape our water future for decades. For example, for many years, the Negley Run Watershed Task Force worked in close partnership with PWSA. We advanced a credible community-driven plan. PWSA staff were deeply engaged. The U.S. Army Corps participated, and consultants, researchers, and neighborhood stakeholders contributed. This collaboration continued through PWSA's Stormwater Strategic Plan, which identified Negley Run as a priority watershed and explicitly called for more community involvement in implementation. But then progress stalled. PWSA shifted its focus toward the urgent task of lead service line replacement, and they deserve credit for that. It showed some real leadership. But the shift came at the cost of advancing critical stormwater and flood mitigation projects that our communities still need. We can only assume that the decisions were made to shift financial priorities, but we were not really involved in that decision-making process. Watershed scale planning requires continuity, shared learning, and long-term thinking. That is not happening now, and without it, we are less prepared for state and federal funding opportunities that we could and should be receiving. What has been most discouraging is the lack of visibility into how major budget decisions are made at PWSA. It's largely opaque. Outside partners see only the finalized annual budget and a 5-year capital plan long after choices are made and when meaningful input is no longer possible. We'll provide some written testimony with maybe some more examples or recommendations, but I just want to say when it comes to city decision making, we need to remember that water use is land use and land use is water use. If the public is removed from water infrastructure decisions, we risk increasing rates without corresponding public benefit. As City Council, I urge you to remain diligent and not relinquish your role in protecting public oversight. If we get this right, we can build stronger partnerships and move toward a true one water approach.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Marcela Gonzalez.
Hello, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you for taking consideration of the public's perspective. My name is Marcela Gonzalez Rivas. My address 7146 Roy Crest Place in Pittsburgh. I have a couple of questions. The first one is, what were the ways in which the community input was considered when drafting this agreement? I think this is really important to make sure that there's meaningful and effective transparency and participation in our Pittsburgh water. I would like council members to consider the importance of protecting the human right to water, which many of us in the community have fought for. And we know that water is a human right, and the framework in which this is based is really established in democratic and transparency as key principles of this framework. And so making sure that there's meaningful and effective participation of the community is really important to keep a good water governance. And this is good for everyone. So I really want to ask council members to consider these as you're making this big, important decision for our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Shavesha Cheney.
Hello, everyone. My name is Shavesha Cheney. I am the Water Equity Director at Upstream Pittsburgh, located in Wilkinsburg. In the spring, Pittsburgh voters had made a very clear choice. Our water asset must remain public. The vote was not just about drinking water. It was about trust, accountability, and transparency in how we manage every aspect of our water system, including stormwater. We have seen what happens when transparency is lost without strong guardrails. We cannot afford to repeat this mistake, especially when stormwater management, flooding, and landslides is one of the most pressing challenges we face in the era of climate change. Including flooding and runoff and infrastructure strains are not abstract issues. They affect our neighborhoods directly. Transparency is not optional. It is the foundation of public trust. by creating a water advisory council, we could guarantee that Pittsburgh Water remains accountable to the people, not just the regulators or the private interest. Council members, you have one last chance to safeguard our public control of our water assets, and I'm strongly encouraging you to please act to keep the decision-making transparent, accountable, and rooted in public interest. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Emily Sawyer.
Emily Sawyer. I live at 1105 Liverpool Street. Please protect our community's public oversight of and access to clean water. Ensure accountability, shared authority, and transparency. Our communities don't need to be exposed to more exploitation by decision makers who are concerned only with profits and not people. Clean water is a human right and cannot be subject to forces of a system that doesn't value people. We can see all around us what happens when we insist that our common goods, like clean air and water, housing, education, food access, the list goes on, are subjected to the vagaries of the free market. The market cannot be relied on to mediate these common goods, because the market insists that we must earn what it supplies us, that we must be successful or at least acceptable within a very narrow confines of what those words mean in order to deserve the things. But everyone deserves clean air and water, housing, access to nutritious food, education. We simply cannot turn these common goods over to private interests. Please create, at the very least, a water advisory council that includes community members so that we can protect our public infrastructure and have real oversight and accountability. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Gabrielle Gray.
Good afternoon, Council. Thank you so much for providing me this opportunity to provide public comment. The referendum to keep Pittsburgh's water public was a major win for residents. However, the referendum only stops Pittsburgh Water from being sold or leased to a private water company. The referendum does not prohibit a private water company from getting into a public-private partnership with Pittsburgh Water to manage the Pittsburgh water system. The absence of community engagement during the drafting of Pittsburgh Water's transfer agreement denied Pittsburgh residents the opportunity to provide input about the need for additional guardrails to be put in place to guide internal functions at Pittsburgh Water, such as Pittsburgh Water management structure and other internal functions. Without those guardrails, Pittsburgh Water could once again hire private sector operation executives, and we do remember Veolia, and how did that work out for our city? So this is our chance to ensure that everybody's voice is heard. And that's why we want Pittsburgh City Council to strongly urge Pittsburgh Water to establish a community advisory board, not only to close the governance loopholes, right, and to ensure better communication, because there have been some communication breakdowns between Pittsburgh Water and community and its ratepayers. We most recently had a One Water Summit that was not properly communicated to the community. We also have had recent board appointments, and that process has not been clearly communicated to community. Actually, I was told that the criteria for who selects the board is coming from the State Attorney General's office. And so, thank you. These are urban myths that we don't want to continue to perpetuate. It's too dangerous to perpetuate myths around our water. And so we see establishing a community advisory board as a clear path for being able to close those communication gaps as well as to ensure that there is diversity at Pittsburgh Water. Currently, the board of directors is primarily representing Caucasian race, and so we want the Community Advisory Board to represent that as well. We also want an ordinance
Ms. Gray,
to be written to
your
ensure
time has expired.
that there is proper governance over Pittsburgh Water. I appreciate
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank you. Our last registered speaker is Ellen Dent.
Hello, council members. Thank you so much for your time and hearing us today. I am Ellen Dent. I'm a global campaigner with Plant-Based Treaty, so you may recognize me from the last time I came here to speak to you all about that. But we are also a proud member of our water table and do support the efforts to keep Pittsburgh's water public. So I'm here on behalf of Plant-Based Treaty today to support their efforts, which means adding safeguards to Bill 2220 to prevent loopholes, and that could result in private companies controlling the water in the city. In addition, we support establishing a city council advisory board. I know we've said that over and over again, but it's essential to govern over the city's water and ensure community participation, as well as the essential right to access to clean public water by all Pittsburghers, and make sure that that is protected as well as transparent. And then, in addition, to make sure that there are safeguards against, future disasters involving water in the city. I mean, we've seen the rivers, how they will overflow with just a bit more rainwater. So infrastructure does need to be changed, and the community needs to be a part of that. I participated in the 2050 comprehensive workshop and spoke to some Pittsburghers there who, were dealing with sewage inside of their basements. So there's, an essential need, a health crisis that is involved when, the community is not part of the conversation when it comes to water mitigation as well. So they also have the right to not have, lead in their pipes, and I know that there's a lot of efforts being done to stop that. But I'm also the mother to a 6-year-old child, and that's very concerning to me, the level of lead exposure that is happening to children, in the city. So, in conclusion, I hope that you will create this advisory board, that you will close the loopholes, and thank you all for your time and consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. That exhausts our list of registered speakers. If there's anyone in chambers wishing to speak, please come forward at this time. Provide your name, neighborhood for the record. You'll be given 1 minute to speak. Anyone in chambers? If not, I'll turn over to members if there's anything they would like to add. Councilwoman Gross?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Mr. President. I called for this post agenda that we had yesterday and this public hearing today because we hadn't had any of this public input on the transfer of what we think is probably a $2 billion asset to PWSA for $1. Some people have suggested that the $100 million that PWSA took out as debt in 1995, when this capital lease was unfortunately signed, that in September of 2025, they could buy the asset for $1. Somehow equates to the value of the asset. Just using the CPI inflation adjustment, $100 million in 1995, it's about $200 million today, which isn't even 1 year of revenue for PWSA. So this is a real loss of a public asset. That's just in dollars and cents, right? In addition to the fact that we have to be accountable and transparent to our constituents because City Council owns the asset, and we're accountable to our constituents, and they can come and talk to us like this twice a week, nearly every week of our lives, 49 weeks a year. And I lived through what were very dark days of the Veolia control of PWSA. When I was first appointed to the board in 2014, and I walked in the door for my first board meeting, And the CEO was a Veolia employee. And the chief engineer was a Veolia employee. And the chief operating officer and the chief accounting officer, all of them didn't work for the board, really, because the previous administration had leased out all of the operations and maintenance to the biggest water company on the planet, who was currently, at that moment, actively destroying the Flint water system and soon destroyed ours as well, and lived through trying to get rid of them, sue them. And, you know, I think it was 2018 when I stood outside of the doors behind me and called for water filters for all households in the city, and called for the replacement of the lead water service lines. And no one would stand with me. I invited everybody on city council and everyone on the school board. And it was a Penn Environment press conference about lead in schools, and I apologize to them to this day. I've apologized before for kind of just hoodwinking their press conference to talk about our own problems with the lead exceedance in the city at large. And so I'm grateful that, you know, in the intervening years, that ship has been righted, right? We also, while I was on the board, created the first customer assistance program so that people on a needs basis do get support for their water bills, depending on their income. We were here and we did the work at this table to fight the state so that we could replace 100% of the lead water service line, because the courts were ordering us to only replace half, which is actually more dangerous for people, because it exposes you to the lead that's breaking loose in the rest of your line, right? We had to change. We defied a court order as a board at PWSA and said, no, we're not going to do this. You have to let us actually replace 100% of the line. And it was this body here that asserted the policing power that cities have, and in the broadest sense, policing meaning protecting public health. And we asserted that power, and then Harrisburg changed state law. Meanwhile, you know, the privatizers were at the gate, and People's Gas was trying a hostile takeover. Aqua was lobbying in the city actively and still is. And in the intervening years, these companies have aggregated, so there's more and more of a monopoly, right? So now Veolia is out of Pittsburgh, but is just merged with Penn American, which owns most of the water systems in the state and keeps gobbling up smaller municipal water and sewer systems. And they didn't go away. They didn't go away. They're still trying. And I think it is this body that our feet are closest to the fire, which is our constituents. And so it's easier to hold our feet to the fire. And so these are my grave concerns about this contract that was signed in the moments of the city nearly collapsing in 1995. I don't know what any of us would have done if we had to go back in a time machine to 1995, right? If we would do things differently. But that is, what we're told by the attorneys. Well, we just have to do it now. But I say, if that city council in 1995 had the power to either approve or disapprove that contract, then this city council also has the power to vote as we think we should. Otherwise, it wouldn't come to us for a vote. That is why we have a division of powers. So thank you all for coming down. I agree with you. We have not had enough public consideration over this very, very weighty decision. I'll stop there, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Charlin?
I don't have any comments on this time.
Okay.
I want to thank the speakers who came today, and I look forward to our discussion tomorrow at the standing committee meeting. I've had a front row seat to, this discussion that's gone on for the better part of a decade. When my wife was the county controller, she was one of the folks sounding the alarm as well, in the crisis that we had around the lead water pipes. you know, in the city, and I could attest to, you know, there was very few people standing with the folks like yourself who were sounding the alarms. My wife was one of them. So I was able to really get an education on, you know, how serious that crisis was at that time. And thankfully, like you said, Councilwoman, you know, we have, you know, in some ways turned the corner to a certain degree. And, you know, I really look forward to hearing from Director Pickering and also just even exploring what does it mean if we do not, you know, go forward with this transfer. What does that mean? As well as I would like to hear more from the very eloquent speakers today that talked about the various loopholes that they see, potential loopholes in the agreement that, you know, if passed, need to be closed and things. I do like the idea of a community advisory board and having, you know, citizens having a voice similar to the work that Ms. Gray and other folks have done with the community advisory board with the Wilkinsburg Penn Joint Water Authority, which is, I believe, my council district is the only district that has customers in that system, and we understand those challenges, you know, associated, you know, with that water authority, and really the only voice that Pittsburgh residents have with the Wilkinsburg Penn Joint Water Authority is the Community Advisory Board, because we do not have an official seat on the board of directors. There's all the other municipalities that they serve east of the city. So, you know, I'm still going to spend some time tonight and again, look forward to our discussion tomorrow to continue to get educated on the various concerns that folks have and the full understand the full dynamics and the full weight of this decision that will be before us, you know, on Wednesday and in the days ahead to ensure that, you know, our water, you know, continues to be a public asset. You know, it's, you know, like I've said, you know, many times, you know, water is the only reason, you know, why we're, you know, having this conversation, and the only reason why our species has existed, you know, at least as modern Homo sapiens for several 100,000 years, since our genesis in East Africa about 300,000 years ago. We wouldn't be here, you know, without water. So it's, you know, there's very few things on the planet as essential as water. So obviously this is something that we have to take tremendously serious. And yeah, I think tomorrow's discussion at the table is going to be one of the more important conversations I've had in my less than 2-year tenure on this council. So I thank the folks who came today for continuing to sound the alarms that have continued to be sounded for the better part of a decade. And I encourage folks to come back tomorrow who came today, and the folks who couldn't make it today to come tomorrow and make your voice heard, as well as be there to observe the conversation that we have tomorrow about this very important issue. So that'll exhaust my comments for today, but you know, I appreciate the folks and your very eloquent words today. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll also just thank all who chose to take time out of their day to come here and speak to us. Similar, Councilman, I think the idea around the Community Advisory Board is actually a really great one. I think if that were actually in place, it would help me tremendously with an issue I've been having with PWSA on the north side for some time now, where they don't want to hold their contractors accountable. So, but their contractors are harassing a community. I think that's actually a really, really good idea. I'm not sure if that's in the agreement that we'll be discussing tomorrow, but if not, we should probably look to see if that could be inserted. And I certainly appreciate Councilwoman Gross's long-standing position on this matter. So I also, too, look forward to the discussion. Madam Clerk, we are asking for this to be on tomorrow's Standing Committee agenda. If there is nothing else, this public hearing is adjourned.